Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Global English Podcast, where learning English becomes easy and enjoyable. I'm your host, Lisa, and today's episode is about something so many learners struggle with, thinking and speaking in English effortlessly. To help us understand this better, we have a special guest, John, an experienced language coach. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to discuss this topic because it's a challenge that every English learner faces, but with the right tips, it can be much easier.
That's wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So, listeners, stick around as we dive into actionable tips and techniques to make thinking and speaking in English a breeze. Let's get started. John, learning to speak English confidently can feel like a mountain to climb for many people. What's the secret to making it more achievable and enjoyable?
Great question, Lisa. The key is to make learning active, immersive, and practical. For instance, let's start with imitation, one of the simplest yet most powerful methods. By mimicking native speakers, learners can absorb pronunciation, intonation, and even emotional nuances.
That's so true. It's like being a child learning to speak for the first time, imitating what you hear without overthinking it.
Exactly. You can listen to a native speaker and repeat exactly what they say, how they say it, and even the emotions behind their words. This helps you train your ears and tongue to adapt to the rhythm and sound of English.
That's such a natural approach. What about the way learners usually focus on individual words? Does that help?
Not really. It's much more effective to avoid learning word by word. Instead, focus on chunks or full phrases. For example, instead of memorizing the words give and up separately, learn the phrase give up as a whole. This way, the expression feels natural, and you don't waste time figuring out how the words fit together.
That makes so much sense. Learning full expressions also helps learners understand how words work together in real contexts.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the next point. Use what you've learned immediately. As soon as you come across a new phrase, use it in a sentence, say it out loud, or even write it down. The quicker you apply new knowledge, the faster it becomes part of your active vocabulary.
That's such a practical tip. It reminds me of how we learn anything new, by doing it right away.
Exactly, Lisa. But it's not just about learning phrases, it's also about knowing how to use phrases in the right context. For example, understanding when to say "how are you" versus "what's up" depends on the situation and the people you're speaking to. Context matters a lot in language learning.
That's a great point, John. Context adds so much depth to how we communicate. How can learners improve their ability to connect what they've learned with real-life situations?
One way is to connect whole sentences with situations. Imagine scenarios where you would use specific phrases. For example, think about ordering food at a restaurant. Practice sentences like, "I'd like a cup of coffee," or "Can I see the menu, please?" Connecting sentences to real-life situations makes them easier to recall when you need them.
I love that. It makes learning feel so much more relevant and practical.
Exactly. And while practicing, it's crucial to engage in naturally varied review. Don't just repeat the same phrase over and over, mix it up. Use the phrase in different sentences or contexts. This variety helps your brain retain information better and prepares you for real conversations.
That's a great tip. It also keeps learning interesting and less repetitive.
Absolutely, and speaking of variety, one of the best things you can do is surround yourself with different native speakers. Every English speaker has their own accent, tone, and way of expressing themselves. By exposing yourself to different native speakers, through movies, podcasts, or even conversation groups, you'll develop a more adaptable ear and gain confidence in understanding different styles of speech.
That's so important. English is such a diverse language, and hearing it from different people makes you more flexible as a speaker.
Exactly, Lisa. It also takes away the fear of not understanding because you get used to hearing a range of accents and speaking speeds. And as a bonus, you'll pick up a variety of expressions and cultural nuances along the way.
These tips are so practical and inspiring, John. Thank you for sharing them.
My pleasure, Lisa. The key takeaway is to stay active, keep things practical, and have fun with the process. The more you engage with the language in real-life contexts, the faster you'll improve.
Absolutely. To all our listeners, start applying these tips today. Imitate, connect, and surround yourself with English. You'll see progress faster than you think. John, before we wrap up, let's share a fun fact with our listeners. Did you know that English is one of the most borrowed from and borrowing languages in the world?
Really? That's fascinating. Can you explain what you mean?
Of course. English has absorbed thousands of words from other languages over centuries. For example, kindergarten comes from German, tsunami is from Japanese, and cliché is from French. At the same time, other languages have borrowed from English. Words like computer, internet, and selfie are used almost universally now.
Wow, it's like English is a global sponge. That's probably why it feels familiar to many learners. They're already using some English words without realizing it.
Exactly. And here's another fun tidbit. English doesn't have an official governing body, unlike some languages. So, new words can enter the language naturally through popular usage.
That explains why English evolves so quickly. It's a living, breathing language.
Absolutely. So, to all our listeners, every time you learn a new English word, you're tapping into a global history of language exchange. Isn't that cool?
It really is. It shows how interconnected we all are through language.
John, this has been so insightful. To sum up, thinking and speaking in English easily comes down to immersion, practice, and embracing mistakes.
Exactly, Lisa. Consistency is the key. With regular practice, anyone can improve.
Thank you so much for joining us, John, and sharing these valuable tips.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a pleasure.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. Share your experience. How do you practice thinking and speaking in English? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious. Let's dive into some new vocabulary from today's podcast. Effortlessly, meaning, in a way that is easy and requires no effort. For example, she completed the task effortlessly, making it seem simple. Actionable, meaning, practical and able to be put into action. Example, the coach provided actionable tips to improve our performance. Immerse, meaning, to involve deeply or completely in an activity or environment. Example, immerse yourself in English by listening to podcasts and speaking regularly. Nuance, meaning, a subtle or slight difference in meaning, expression, or tone. Example, mastering the nuances of pronunciation will make your English sound more natural. Mimic, meaning, to imitate or copy someone's actions, speech, or behavior. Example, he mimicked his teacher's accent perfectly, making everyone laugh. Chunk-based learning, meaning, learning phrases or groups of words as a whole rather than focusing on individual words. Example, chunk-based learning helps you sound more fluent by using natural expressions. Context, meaning, the circumstances or setting in which a word or action is used. Example, the meaning of some words can change depending on their context. Relevant, meaning, closely connected or appropriate to the topic or situation. Example, his comments were relevant to the discussion and added valuable insights. Adaptable, meaning, able to adjust to new conditions or environments. Example, she is adaptable and quickly picks up new accents when traveling. Takeaway, meaning, the main point or lesson learned from a discussion or event. Example, the key takeaway from today's podcast is to practice using English daily. Thank you for listening to our episode. I hope you learned something new and helpful today. Please give us a like and subscribe for video like this, share it with your friends, and let us know what you think in the comments section below. We'll be back with more interesting discussions soon.